This interview is being brought to you by teststrips.com. That's teststrips with a Z.com. Managing diabetes is your business. Making it affordable is theirs. You can turn your extra unused diabetes supplies into cash. Up to $50 per box by visiting teststripswithaz.com. All right, joining me right now, coming off his UFC debut, a third-round finish of Chris De La Rocha at UFC Milwaukee last month, the undefeated Juan Adams, and about 15 of his wrestling guys that he coaches. All of his students are all on the bus with him, and they all join me on the show right now. Juan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
So, doing some coaching, I could see. So, talking with the dual meet, how'd everything go today?
They did pretty well. We have a pretty small squad. We don't host a full team, so they did really well. We're peaking right in time for state, and that's all you can really ask for.
So to talk about you and your MMA career, I mean, what a rise up through the ranks that you've had. I mean, from what I've seen, you made your amateur debut in September of 2016, and now you're in the UFC and you're finishing dudes on big cards. These stories are very rare in this sport. Sometimes you see fighters, they take like 5 to 7 years to get to the UFC. You do it in less than 2. Is that crazy to you, or did you see this all happening so quickly?
We kind of expected it. We looked at the heavyweight division and we realized that my baseline of athletic ability was that much higher than most of the field. So we knew it was going to be fast. We didn't expect it to be quite that fast, but it went pretty quickly, and it is still we're still reeling from it, but we're back on the drawing board. We're back in the weight room, back working out, and we're just ready to get the next one underway.
What got you into the sport from the beginning? Like, when did you get in there and start training? What got you in there, at first? And when did you essentially realize, good Lord, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a career out of this thing.
It started right when I was in college. I would come back home on breaks, and I was looking for a place to wrestle. I wrestled collegiately, and Paradigm Training Center, which is an MMA gym. They were the best wrestling gym in the town at the time. So I started coming back, helping them with practices, and then some of the fighters asked me to help them with their MMA wrestling. So right from there, I knew I could be okay at it. I had an NFL tryout right after I graduated, and once I realized that wasn't really what I wanted to do, everything kind of took place. It was January 2016 when I started training and realized, this is the last thing I was going to do before I, kind of succumbed to corporate America and got a job. So luckily it played out.
You made the right decision, it looks like. What do you attribute to all of this early success? I mean, obviously you're a big guy, even for the heavyweight division. You got a big personality. You're pretty active on social media. You're a pretty fun follow. You've gotten some really good opportunities, and when you got them, you made the most of them. So what's the secret here? What's the secret to this early success for you?
Honestly, it's just hard work. There's a good saying I like to go by. Luck is when opportunity meets preparation, and so you can't really control when your opportunities are going to come up, but you can control how prepared you are, and that's what we did. We've been training 6 hours a day since my amateur debut, so we've treated it like a job from day one, and then as I got more sponsors, I was able to actually do it during normal hours and add the rest in there. And once I got my rest schedule right, the nutrition right, and everything on the same page, everything just kind of took off even faster.
You had your first 3 pro fights with LFA, and then you get your shot on the Contender Series. And listen, people know that I've been critical of the UFC at different times, but one thing I'll never be critical of, at least I hope, is the Contender Series concept. Like, I love it. It's a breath of fresh air, and when the seasons end, I actually get very upset about it because it is that good. So when you got the call to fight on the Contender Series, did you watch the first season at all? Did you know what you were up against? And how exciting was it for you to get that opportunity?
It was really exciting. I watched a little bit of the first season. I don't really like to watch too much film of opponents. I don't focus on what they do. I focus more so on myself. The only people I absolutely watch are people that my manager and coaches tell me I need to watch. But it was very exciting for me just because I knew it was one of those times you don't get many moments in life where, you know, an opportunity like that jumps out at you. And when you do, you have to make the most of it. So it was one of those things, you know, it was unexpected to get a multi-fight contract with LFA with 0 pro fights, but I did. And I jumped on that opportunity. Then I wasn't expecting to get an opportunity to fight for a shot at the UFC that quickly, but as soon as I got the call, I accepted it. And, you know, everything happens, and that's how you have to do it. You never know when you're going to get a chance in this sport. People get last-minute call-ups all the time, and, you know, it was even more shocking because I've seen guys on Contender Series win and not get a contract, not even get a conditional contract or anything like that. So I was happy to get the win. I was looking, you know, I finally got paid. You know, that's what's important. And,
a lot of people.
When I got the contract, it was icing on the cake.
A lot of people get thrown off by the crowd or the lack thereof a crowd during the Contender Series. I mean, you fighting for LFA, it's usually a pretty good crowd. It's on the weekend, so people are a little bit rowdy, having a couple of cocktails. And then you go into the Tough Gym, and some people have told me that it's something that you really have to get used to. What did you think about fighting in the Tough Gym and, you know, fighting in front of, you know, just a handful of people?
I mean, the crowd never really bothers me all that much. The environment is unlike any other, but it reminded me a lot of just, you know, a college wrestling practice or wrestling in college. You know, everyone there is very passionate about it. Everyone there is invested in each of those athletes, and that's how that level of intimacy you don't really get at any other event like that. So that was really cool. But I personally liked it. You know, I don't like a whole lot of interaction, especially right after a fight when I'm still in, you know, kill mode. But so that was a breath of fresh air, and that was really exciting, and I loved it.
You make your Octagon debut last month in Milwaukee against Chris De La Rocha. You get a 3rd round finish, but De La Rocha didn't make it easy on you, man. He was tough, and for the first time in your professional career, you went to a 2nd round and even to a 3rd round. What was that night and that fight like for you in Milwaukee?
That night was really weird for me. One, I couldn't wear my contacts during the fight. So my vision before that fight, I'm seeing a lot of stories saying I'm like blind or nearly blind. That's not really the case. My vision was 2100 before I had corrective surgery. So that's what I was fighting with. And those Octagon jitters are a real thing, man. It was a huge adrenaline dump going into the 2nd round. And that coupled with not being able to see, I couldn't really keep the pace that I wanted to keep because I didn't want to walk into something stupid. But once the 3rd round started, the jitters kind of settled. I figured it was time to go, so that's when I ended it. Honestly, the fight probably could have been called at the end of the 1st or 2nd, but I'm glad it went to the 3rd. It allowed that highlight reel finish.
I mean, you're accustomed to finishing these fights early. In a way, was it almost better to have a fight like that so you could face some adversity, kind of get that experience, fight when you're tired, and find that something a little extra? I mean, you can't put a price tag on that kind of learning in the fight game, at least from the outside looking in. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. You really can't put a price tag on it, and it's good to know that even when I do have an adrenaline dump, I do have a 2nd win. A lot of athletes don't have that luxury. So I was very, very grateful for that. Very grateful I could still get the win. And my coaches, you know, they learned a lot about me that fight, and we're incorporating all this stuff into training now. We're already doing things slightly differently, and it's going to show next time I step in the Octagon.
As far as the vision goes, did you always wear contacts when you fought, except, you know, with the exception of this fight, or was this something you were just trying for the first time, the vision was getting a little bit worse for you?
No, I always wore contacts for my fights. I started wearing contacts my sophomore year of high school, and I instantly saw a vast improvement in all of my athletics, and so I kept that going. My astigmatism is really bad, so they would always fall out. Now that I've gotten the surgery, my vision's already better than it was with contacts beforehand, so that'll show, and you'll see a huge improvement in my striking now.
Let's talk about this past weekend, Juan. The UFC makes their debut on the ESPN family of networks in Brooklyn, New York. Co-main event was a couple of fellow Contender Series alums, Alan Crowder and Greg Hardy. A lot of people have been very vocal, and rightfully so, about Greg Hardy coming into the UFC and getting a co-main event spot. And the fight really wasn't very good. Hardy lands the illegal knee, heard around the world, and gets disqualified. So as you're watching this all unfold, and I know you're a guy that that's been calling for Greg Hardy and saying some things about him on social media. As you're watching this all unfold, kind of walk us through it. What are you seeing? What are you feeling? Give us your thoughts on that co-main event on Saturday.
Okay. So basically what I saw is Greg Hardy, he looked okay in the first round. He has 0 ground game, 0 wrestling defense. He got taken down by what I would call an inferior wrestler to myself. Anyone that knows anything about combat sports would say the same thing. He's not very good, and even though he won the first round, he was in danger. You know, if I put Greg Hardy in a crucifix, he's not getting up. The fact that Alan Crowder had that position and couldn't finish the fight speaks volumes about him. And, you know, he got lucky that Greg Hardy felt panicked and tried to take the easy way out. You can see the frustration building on Greg Hardy's face the entire fight. Going into the second round, he'd never been there before, and he didn't know what to do. Alan Crowder was talking to him. He got in his head, and it showed, and Greg Hardy proved to what we already know, that he's got the emotional control of a toddler. And, you know, he's a mental midget, and as soon as he got tested, he looked for the easy way out. He took the easy way out, and I feel like he wasn't going to win that fight any way, shape, or form. He won the first round, but he was gassed. You know, you look at 2 professional athletes, and they're laying on the ground after 7 minutes of work. No matter how tired I've ever been in a fight, in a match, I've never laid down like that. So it was really pathetic to me, and it wasn't worthy of a co-main event fight. You know, honestly, I would rather watch Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou again if we watch that. It was that bad to me. So that's what I saw as a professional, and then Greg Hardy proved that he's not ready. And honestly, I feel that the UFC won't give him another fight for another 6 to 8 months, and they're going to hope that he actually trains and takes it seriously. But in my opinion, there's no amount of work that he'll ever do to be on my level, and that's just a fact.
So you think the knee was on purpose, wasn't an experience, he was just trying to get out of the fight? I mean, that's kind of a popular way to look at it. You know, Alan Crowder didn't feel that way when he talked to Luke Thomas on Monday. That's how you feel, that he delivered that knee on purpose to get out of the fight?
He might not have intended to get out of the fight, but he was looking for an easy way out. I think he was hoping that Crowder would stand up in time, but even if he didn't, he wasn't like super shocked by the decision at all. I don't really think he was remorseful of it at all either. Alan Crowder, of course, he's not going to say anything. You know, he got the opportunity of a lifetime. He's the guy that beat Greg Hardy. He could, if he played it right, he could be America's hero right now. But honestly, it's irrelevant. I see both of those guys as, you know, just roster fillers. In 2 years, this will be the last thing anyone's talking about, so I don't really care anymore.
I mean, you've been pretty vocal since Saturday night. You said you want to fight with Hardy. In fact, you said on Twitter, I'm sure he wants to jump back in real quick, so just put the fight somewhere cool and I'll do it. I get a vacation and you get rid of a dumbass who can't even lose right. So what about Greg Hardy put you in that mindset? Is this his pass? Is the NFL all-pro stature getting him these big spots on these cards? I mean, it could be a number of things, I guess, but when you hear Greg Hardy's name, what comes to mind for you?
Honestly, when I hear Greg Hardy's name, I just hear someone that doesn't deserve to be where I'm at, you know? You look at all of his opponents, he was fed cans his entire career. His first opponent was 44 years old. He did his first amateur fight, they still had shin guards on. Like, come on, man. Like, that's a glorified smoker. And then his second fight, I think his opponent was 42 and 6 feet tall. You know, like, his third opponent was 37, 6 feet tall. Like, as a professional heavyweight fighter, and they're continually feeding you guys but barely 6 feet. Prior to this weekend, he had one opponent over 6 feet tall as a professional, and that guy walked around at 240. So if they're giving you people, they're feeding you people for your style, and then they're feeding you people, and you haven't gotten any better. I saw zero improvement between his first fight and that fight, and that's what bothers me. And people want to continue to compare me to him just because we're both big, we're both athletic. Like, we're not the same, all right? We're not the same on any level. I was giving guys whoever would take the fight, right? Only people that would accept fights from me were guys with huge records. You know, My second pro fight, I fought a guy that was 4-3 as a pro with 10 pro boxing bouts. My third pro fight was a guy that was 8-7 as a pro, ranked number 1 in Louisiana, ranked number 3 in Texas, and I beat his ass in the first round. Greg Hardy is nowhere near that. All right, he's fought no one of merit. Austin Lane was his best opponent, and he had no chin, and it's shown. What's Austin Lane done since his last fight with Greg Hardy?
Nothing,
Not
I don't
much,
think.
right? The other two opponents he's had, you have a guy that's 6 foot tall, walking around at 290, looking like Jabba the Hutt. Like, that's not an athlete. The fact that he's called a pro athlete is a disgrace, and that's what bothers me about it. And the fact that people continuously compare me to this man pisses me off. I don't like it. And furthermore, his management company's been trying to sign me for the past year and a half, and I specifically will not work with him just because they've signed Greg Hardy.
So if they dropped Greg Hardy, you would be open to that conversation.
Yeah, but until they drop him, I'm not entertaining any messages from them. I'm not entertaining any calls from them. Nothing. And that's just how it's gonna be. It's funny though. I did notice he changed his nickname since in the last 3 or 4 months. What is he, the Prince of War now? That's such a middle school nickname. You can't even come up with something better than Prince, like Lord of War. God of War is already taken. That'd be a copyright infringement thing. But he clearly lacks creativity. He's not entertaining. And like I said, he can't even lose the right way. So I don't understand what the appeal is of this guy.
So you're willing and able. He wants to get back in there quickly. Do you think the UFC would ever entertain this idea of you and Greg Hardy throwing down in the Octagon, or is that just way too risky right now?
It's too risky for them. They're never going to let me fight Greg Hardy. His management's never going to okay the fight because they're all scared, and they don't want to lose their cash cow this early because whether they like it or not, that's all this is. It's a publicity stunt. That's all Greg Hardy's MMA career will ever be, and that's how he's going to be remembered, as a publicity stunt.
Let's just say the UFC calls and says, listen, Greg Hardy wants it. He called us. He wants the fight. Let's make it happen. How would that fight go? Walk us through how that fight would go.
It goes one of two ways. If I'm not feeling very happy that day, I destroy him in round 1. He lasts 3 minutes. I take him down. He doesn't get up. And the best thing that can happen to Greg Hardy, if he ever does agree to fight me, is that the ref stops that fight early, because I guarantee you he will leave on a stretcher.
Whether it's Greg Hardy or any other fighter in that division, I know you talked about it. You had a corrective surgery to help with your vision. I know your vision's a little bit better. You were looking to get back in there to train. Are you cleared to train yet? And when would you like to get back in there and do the damn thing in the Octagon?
I'm cleared to train. I'm good to go full contact. I've been cleared to train for the last week and a half. I'd like to get back in there as early as mid-March, no later than May.
I know Walt Harris is out of his fight now due to a positive test. So I believe he was supposed to fight Alexei Olenek. Is that something you'd be interested in?
Like I said before, I'll fight anyone on the roster. I really don't care. Whoever the opponent is, they send me the paperwork. I sign it within 48 hours, and we're good to go. So I'm up for anyone. I want to fight everyone in the division at some point, because when my career is over, I don't want there to be any doubt where I stood and where I stacked up against the best.
Awesome, man. Well, I know you're busy. You're on the bus home from the wrestling meet, so I appreciate you jumping on and taking some time with us. Before we get out of here, let everyone know where to find and follow you on the web, social media, any shout-outs, sponsors, anything like that. Please take the floor.
All right. First and foremost, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at ChosenJuan285. That's Juan, not Juan. My sponsors, I got to shout out Rhino Pro Truck Bed Liners. They're my biggest sponsor, the premier ones. They're, built Rhino tough, best truck bed liners in the game. Then we've got FlemingAttorneys.com for all your personal injury needs. Houston's premier personal injury attorneys. The Cheat Meal, Ryan Casey Baker. He's my strength and conditioning coach, one of my MMA coaches. The man does it all, whether it's self-defense, martial arts, mixed martial arts, or just trying to get in shape. He's the best one. And Jet Hot Premium Coatings. They've been there, one of my sponsors since day one. And who else do we have? Jet Hot, Rhino. That's it for right now. My home gyms, the Fight Lab out in Katy and Paradigm Training Center.
All right, Juan, thank you for the time, man. All the best to you, and hope to see you back in the Octagon
Sooner rather than later, my man.
All right, then. Thanks.